Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
And this is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan Read the Paper. It is Sunday, August 25th, 2019. We are just on the verge of Sadie Eleanor Abuhoff's birthday.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Wednesday,
that's
August
right.
28th.
Happy birthday, Sadie.
Happy birthday, Sadie. We're also on the verge of celebrating the nuptials
it's the word.
of Zeke Abuhoff and Noelle Borg. And that's going to be fun.
Yes.
Looking forward to that.
Right.
Looking forward to seeing the extended Borg family, some of the Abuhoffs, some of the Grangers. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to all the Abuhoffs, really, when you think about it, but fine.
No, I meant only some of the Abuhoffs will be there.
I know.
But I get your drift.
Yes. Glad. So anyway, you brought me up to speed.
Well, I mean, it's the 25th.
It's a big anniversary.
Yes, and we're still getting over celebrating August 24th in the year 410 was the day that Rome was sacked by the Visigoths.
Yes, the downfall of the Roman Empire. The
or
anniversary.
as Edward Gibbon put it, 1163 years after the foundation of Rome, the imperial city, which had subdued and civilized so considerable a part of mankind, was delivered to the licentious fury of the tribes of Germany and Scythia.
Yeah, well, that's kind of loads it up. Licentious, huh? Well,
apparently some disaffected slaves opened the gates and let the Visigoths in.
Really? Well, that will do it. That's 1,100 years, a pretty good run when you think about it, though, right?
Yes. Basically Rome was had really run its course by then.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Just kind of the Visigoths putting a little dot on the I.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's 1,100 years.
Anyway,
all right. Big anniversary.
Big anniversary.
So,
and we have some other anniversaries to discuss, but later.
Yeah. But we were out and about last night. We were at the McCarter Theater in Princeton.
Looking for Visigoths.
We were seeing a, what do you call it, lecture/performance by Ira Glass.
Yes.
Of This American Life.
Yes.
The founder, some would say, or one of the guiding spirits of the podcast movement, certainly of the NPR radio movement. And he was kind of interesting. He had I guess the presentation was loosely titled 7 Things I've Learned, and it was loosely structured around things that he had come to believe were significant for the purpose of his career and, to put on an effective show. And, again, loosely. But he did talk about structure. He did talk about what makes a good story. And he's kind of an interesting guy. I mean, I did look it up. We didn't know as much about him as perhaps some others do. And he's been at this for a pretty long time. He's only a few years younger than we are, actually. And he did, as Granger pointed out to us earlier, and I didn't realize, have a lot of his career in Chicago before he came to New York. And he kind of was up and down. I mean, he helped develop this notion of what we see as modern NPR radio with these stories. And the thesis of This American Life was to focus on stories about people who you don't read about in the news, stories that you don't read about in the news. You want to call them everyday lives, you can call them that kind of thing. And somehow draw from those stories and those interviews some texture about what's going on in sort of society as a whole. And I think, he's clearly been highly successful in that, even more successful than I would have realized before I did the research. And I thought he was interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It was a little bit rambling.
Yeah.
But I will say it was a packed house.
Yeah.
And people were anxious to hear him.
Yeah.
And very positive about it. He told a lot of anecdotes about his career and about his life. I'm not sure we came out of it with any particular lessons learned.
No.
But it was entertaining.
Well, what became clear, here's the deal. I think one of the things he's got going for him that he uses is it's a combination of sort of low expectations, and that he comes in, he's not the most impressive physical specimen. He kind of talks in a very flat affect, a very flat voice, and he seems to be extemporizing to just sort of musing in a very non-threatening way. It turns out, personality-wise, he's a little bit the opposite of that. He's a control freak. He's totally into preparation. Even in what he was talking about yesterday, you heard all about all the editing that goes on to produce the simplest pieces, so that when you think about it, it's you're listening and it sounds like kind of rambling, slowly developing interview, open-ended questions, just letting the person talk, not a professional, and it creates an aura of verisimilitude. It sort of resonates in that way. When a lot of it is kind of fairly highly structured, highly edited, again, based on the research I did, control freak.
Well, he did mention that he found his one great talent was editing.
Yeah. So it's edited within an inch of its life. So it kind of sneaks up on you in that way,
well,
right?
It's sort of beautiful because it gives the impression of being, very impromptu.
Yeah.
Very unstructured, and yet clearly quite choreographed and curated.
Right. And that
to create that.
And that gives you a lot of the impact. It's funny because we were at one point he was showing how the idea of possible putting animated pictures or just figures, add them to the radio broadcast, and it, my view, I think was your view too, that didn't really work because the radio delivery system, the notion that this kind of a low expectations thing, it leaves a lot to your imagination. You fill it in, and it's sort of sketching things out. And once you start making it a major motion picture, it doesn't work. It doesn't carry that way.
Well, it's just that it limits your vision.
Right.
Okay? What was so rich before when you imagine it in your mind just gets a little bit stripped and dumbed down and limited by being actually illustrated. And you say, oh, that's what he's talking about.
Right.
It's the same as when somebody makes a movie of your favorite book. Mm-hmm. So much.
You don't need that. Yeah.
So that was.
He also had. I also learned. He went to school with David Sedaris. That's how he knows David Sedaris. They went to Northwestern together. He's involved in the play we saw, the new one, the Mike Birbiglia thing. Mm-hmm. It was produced by him. He's friends with Mike Birbiglia. They work together. He's just involved in a lot of stuff. So he's a very creative guy, and it was interesting. It was very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, so we had fun.
Yeah.
Thanks to Lisa Walsh.
That's Lisa Walsh gets all credit.
Who got the tickets because she is working on the set for the play about Gloria Steinem. Gloria.
Aptly named Gloria.
So
coming up.
Yeah, so that was a fun night out.
Yeah. So we would both. I showed you an article, which was a review.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent about this.
What we talk about when we talk about books.
Yeah, what we talk about when we talk about books: The History and Future of Reading.
Yeah. By
Leah Price, and I'm not sure I really got much out of the description of this book. What sounds like it might be interesting about this book is a little bit of the history of books and how people use them, and that it's fairly recent that we have this idea that we each have to have our own copy of a book. The Victorians were great borrowers and lenders, and they belonged to for-profit subscription libraries. You may have heard of things. I mean, libraries go way back. You may have heard of the Free Library in Philadelphia, and there are other free libraries with the concept that you could just go in and borrow. But the Victorians also had the paying libraries, and then it's the publishers who convince people that that's disgusting. You shouldn't be passing around these
You need your own copy.
You need your own copy.
Well, the other thing is they did point out that books have not always been considered an unadulterated virtue, if you will. That some people thought it was people shouldn't spend as much time reading books. It was either a waste of time or it made people too excited or get the wrong ideas or something like that.
Yes, there was the thought that cerebral disorder could be brought on by an inordinate fondness for light reading.
Yeah.
In other words, if you're reading the wrong stuff,
right.
It's going to drive you crazy. And maybe that's the case. But she also mentions that in this day and age, people are so worried that we will stop reading,
right.
that there's a great deal of enthusiasm for read anything. Don't censor anything. I think it's important to...
I think the theory behind that is that there's a different intellectual process required of reading as compared to, say, playing video games or watching television. And it's considered a more intense process that ought to be encouraged. And it's hard to argue with that, really.
Yeah. I was a little bit flummoxed by when she's talking about the importance of books and when she's talking about the importance of reading.
Yeah,
because certainly you can keep reading without having actual
I don't know whether it was the person who wrote the book or the reviewer got lost somewhere in the article and kind of lost their way.
So I'm ambivalent about this book, but I just thought we ought to bring it up because we talk, and we're going to talk more about reading. Also, there was an article this week, maybe you saw it, I think it was in the New York Times, about bad copies of books.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
That there are editions, especially online, that aren't
accurate.
Accurate.
People are writing their own stuff and calling it 1984.
In order to get around copyright, they may publish something that omits large bits or changes words. So be careful when you're downloading something online because it's for free. Maybe it's not what you think you should be getting. Yeah. Because, we do rely on those kind of copies, and sometimes they're bad.
All right. So there's something you brought to my attention last week about audio drama.
Well, wasn't it funny that throughout Ira Glass's presentation, he's exhorting you to look into this podcast, or, he does at a certain point at the end pretty much say the world is, going to the dogs. Yeah. Except for it is the greatest time of television ever. Right. He recommended things, but there was a great deal of talk about podcasts, and of course we are, in favor of podcasts. But there was an article about a week ago in the New York Times talking about audio dramas. So every once in a while we've heard a play on radio. Radio has a great history.
Well, it used to be
radio plays,
right? Right, exactly.
And didn't.
I think it goes way back to Shirley Jackson, honestly. even before that, radio plays.
Well, way before that.
Yeah.
Don't be silly. But your theater on the Upper West Side, Symphony Space.
Symphony Space, yeah.
Used to do short stories, and didn't they also do plays or not?
I don't think so. It was mostly selected shorts, and they still do that. Okay. Where they just read short stories. But anyway, these are plays written for radio.
It has struck me that, sometimes it is fun to just listen to a play. Yeah. And they recommended a few. So I can recommend this article called Now Return With Us to the Days of Yesteryear to get you started on what might be some... fun.
What do you liked one or two of the ones that are recommended here?
Well, I will just say the one that seemed most accessible to me was called The Truth. Mm-hmm. And this is Jonathan Mitchell's anthology fiction series, creating movies for your ears since 2010. And this has been featured on This American Life. Right. Okay. So... that's one possible.
Yeah, the one I liked was Homecoming, one of the most compelling and star-studded psychological thrillers. Aired 2 seasons since its 2016 debut, starring Catherine Keener, Oscar Isaac, David Schwimmer. I haven't listened to it, but it sounds interesting to me. Homecoming.
Okay, audio dramas.
All right.
Ira Glass also acknowledged that we're all saying, but who has time to to listen to any more of this?
And of course, the one thing he said, for example, Fleabag, and of course we watch Fleabag. So and then
we're carving out time to watch Fleabag.
You have to watch Fleabag. All right, but also just continuing the theme in terms of podcasts and audio takes us to playlists. The Times had, I thought it was a really interesting article about candidates' playlists. So each of the candidates have, play music during their appearances. And they have set playlists. Most of them cooperated and sent to the Times what the playlists were. In some cases, they didn't, and the Times sent a reporter in to actually write down the names of the songs that they played.
This is while they're talking?
No, this is just for a rally. Not while they're talking. It's the music when they walk up. It's during pauses. It's in between time, stuff like that.
And is this all, they get permission of the musicians?
No, you don't necessarily get the musicians, as long as you have...
Because I know once in a while somebody
there's a conflict,
says, Trump.
No, yeah. No.
You're not allowed to use this or...
I think that, first of all, I think that comes up very rarely. And usually they can't say much about it if they've sold the rights to a clearinghouse like an ASCAP or something. So
that's
the publicity
but
thing.
they just like a little publicity, letting people know.
Right, but that's
not happy about it.
But that's not really what this is about. So this is just about what they're choosing, and it tells you something about each of the candidates. It doesn't tell you. It would be naive to say, well, the playlist really tells you what the people listen to, because the playlists are curated to appeal to the people at the rallies and beyond.
Yeah, and to create a certain ambiance.
Right. So that I don't think is going on, and no one's saying it is.
Well, do you have an interesting one? Or?
Yeah, they're all interesting. I mean, I could go through 20 of them, but I'm not going to. But they have Joe Biden's, and, the Joe Biden songs are a little older, mostly soul oldies. The message in the songs, old and recent, momentum and redemption. Elizabeth Warren's insist on optimism undergirded by determination. Kristen Gillibrand plays basically all women artists because her deal is that she is pro-women.
Well, can you give me a few songs?
Well, I could give you songs, but I never heard of any of these songs. But let me get to one. No.
You've heard of the Biden songs, haven't you?
Yeah, but you're already taking what I need. Okay? So those are necessarily the ones I'd give the songs from. Beto O'Rourke's interesting because he was a rocker. He was in his own band, and he's the one who's probably playing the stuff that's the music that he actually likes. Kamala Harris goes up to, here's a song, Work That, an empowerment anthem by Mary Blige. Cory Booker, it's all inspirational stuff. To me, the most interesting was, at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders, every song has the word revolution in the title. Not a big surprise. Donald Trump, though. They have Donald Trumps, okay? Donald Trump, those I could give you those songs, because those songs, I guess I kind of know. And the funny thing is that they are primarily Rolling Stone songs. They're like 4 out of the 22 titles are Rolling Stone songs, but also, perhaps surprisingly, 3 or 4 of them are Queen songs, right? And 3 or 4 of them are Elton John songs. So the Times observes that the Trump songs, they're oldies with a swagger, including, surprisingly, gay swagger, which you wouldn't have expected from Trump. But the other interesting thing about the Trump's playlist, and they just report it, they say he opens every rally with Lee Greenwood's anthem, God Bless the USA, and he walks off from every rally with the Rolling Stones, You Can't Always Get What You Want. So, I don't know.
Well, that seems like a fun article.
Yeah, it is a fun article.
To get the most out of it,
you have to read it.
To go back and
it's
read
1,000 songs, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, back to books.
Yes.
All right. And speaking of swagger, there's in the Wall Street Journal has a review of 2 books. The title of the review is Dangerous Dynasties. The Borgias by Paul Strathern and The Family Medici by Mary Hollingsworth. Okay, so both of these writers have written they've both written about the Borgias and the Medici. And these are fun books. Both, weighing in at about 400 pages or so on. But the Borgias, I mean, who doesn't love to read about the Borgias? They're so unforgivingly bad. Their lives just surpass anything.
Give us something that's really scandalous. Then give us something scandalous about the Borgias. Then.
Well, of course, there's Rodrigo, who you might also know as Alexander the Alexander, is it the 4th? who was a pope, Pope Alexander the Fourth, and he was quite. I'm saying Alexander the Sixth. Sorry, just put that capital I in the wrong spot. Anyway. He's the one who painted the bulls all over the Vatican apartments, and Pope Julius II said, "Get rid of those, Borgia bulls right away," to Raphael, who changes everything.
Anyway. Something short of scandalous. When I said something scandalous, the idea of painting bulls is not doing it.
I'm just getting started.
Yeah, okay.
He had quite a lot of children. Yeah. Popes aren't supposed to have children. And he had, well-acknowledged mistresses. He had Cesare Borgia, or Caesar Borgia, however you want to pronounce it, not to mention Lucretia Borgia. Mm-hmm. You remember Lucretia,
yes,
right? She was actually very smart. There were all kinds of rumors about how close she was to her daddy, the Pope. But she also was a great manager. She had a great mind. She apparently helped him out a lot in the Pope business. Anyway, he marries her off. She gets married 3 different times for various political reasons, okay? First time around to a Sforza, at a certain point, Daddy decides this is no longer necessary and is going for an annulment on the grounds that the marriage was never consummated. The husband says, oh, yes, it was. And Pope Alexander VI says, I'm the Pope. I would know if my daughter had consummated her marriage. And anyway... he is convinced to give in, and that gets annulled. The second husband, I don't remember his name, but he is, when that marriage has run its course in terms of political advantages to the Pope, he is found dead in, I think, the river. And rumors are that Lucretia's brother had dispatched him, so to speak. Then she marries your friend and mine, Alfonso d'Este. And, well, they have actually... He's the Duke of Ferrara.
Okay.
Anyway, they have a very long-lasting marriage. But neither of them are particularly faithful. Well, Cesare was a super bad guy. He did things like just go up on the balcony and shoot at various felons, prisoners, for target practice with his arrow. Anyway, the Borgias are pretty shocking, and it's kind of amazing to read about them. The Medici, of course, weren't as, quite as disgusting, but it's kind of a lot of bloody and amazing history. So if you're into that kind of thing, those are 2 new books by Hollingsworth and Strathern. Then we also have a new biography of Charlemagne, King and Emperor, A New Life of Charlemagne by Janet Nelson. Charlemagne was a busy guy, a bright guy, a fun guy. He had a bunch of wives. They would die every 10 years or so on, and he'd have a new one. But in any case, the one thing I learned from this article was he was a great swimmer. Mm-hmm. Who knew?
Who knew?
He actually installed Roman baths at his capital in Aachen, and he would hold meetings with his entourage in the baths.
Really?
I know, you're wondering about the whole bathing suit issue. But,
there were no bathing suits. There were no bathing suits. We know that.
Possibly not. But there you have...
Yeah, Charlemagne. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess that's right. That Charlemagne's son, that's what Pippin's about. That's what that story is.
Yeah.
Son of Charlemagne.
By the way, this writer...
Yeah.
Ms. Nelson does not like to refer to him as Charlemagne. Just Charles I.
Oh, Charlemagne is so much better. I mean, it's crazy that you wouldn't use that. Don't you think?
Yeah, except there are people who say Charlemagne kind of means Charles the Great, and he wasn't very big.
I know. Event. It's a good name. Okay, so this is Players' Nickname Weekend. It's tough talking about baseball. Mets had a bad weekend, but the fact is, Players' Nickname Weekend. It's sort of like visiting weekend at summer camp or something like that. They say to the players, "What would you like to do? How would you like to write your own name, your own nickname, rather than your given name on the back of your uniforms? And you can wear fancy cleats, and you can write things on your cleats." It seems kind of odd. I don't know what the appeal of that is exactly. The union negotiated this. Apparently, the players were dying to do this. And so you have this odd weekend where, again, everything's about selling merchandise, where in each team, one team is going to be dressed all in white, the other is dressed all in black, which, among other things, obscures the names they put on their uniforms because they're not in a different color. And the whole thing's just totally bizarre. It's like the Major League Baseball has kind of lost its collective minds.
They're really flailing about.
Yeah, I don't know why they do this.
Who thought this up?
But the Journal just complains about the quality of nicknames. This is what gets the Wall Street Journal. They say, in the past, you had great nicknames. You had
the past.
The past. Exactly.
It always comes down to nostalgia.
Well, it's ridiculous because it's say Babe for Babe Ruth. What could be better than that? He had a name, it was George, but they called him Babe. And you have Lou Gehrig, the Iron Horse. And you have Willie Mays, Say Hey. They called Willie Mays because whenever Willie Mays would meet somebody, he'd say Hey. Except those are 3 nicknames out of 42 million ball players. I mean,
right.
These guys, they're doing the best they can. The Journal also has a very odd statistic. I don't know how the heck they came up with it. They said only 24%, it's a precise number, of players are sporting actual nicknames. I don't know what the others are sporting. They're not sporting their real names. There are only 1 or 2 exceptions to that.
Well, maybe they just mean that only 24% have nicknames.
Yes,
people,
I know, but
who
has that information? They're looking at this guy's. First of all, a lot of them are in Spanish. They're looking at it and they're saying, "That's a nickname. That's not a nickname. No one calls this guy the elephant. He just likes elephants." That's in the article. So it's kind of weird. In any event. Mostly it's just this weird promotion. I think you put your finger on it. It does look, you just watch the whole weekend and say the MLB doesn't have a clue. Major League Baseball, what are they doing? So, there's been a weekend of not knowing who's doing what because you can't read anybody's name. And even if you could, you wouldn't know who it is. But I think we're back to regular baseball in a couple of days.
All right. So this goes under the heading of just being cranky about baseball
I'm cranky about the Mets. The Mets lost 3 games, and it's tough to get over it.
What a surprise. You cranky about the Mets.
I am cranky about them.
There was another anniversary this week, and that was August 21st.
Yeah.
Anniversary of the Mona Lisa being stolen in 1911 from the Louvre. And before that, the Mona Lisa was just another painting by Leonardo that nobody was terribly excited about. Although Leonardo, I guess, liked it because he kept it throughout his life. But once it gets stolen, it becomes everybody's favorite.
Yeah, you've mentioned that to me before.
Yeah, that's what causes the excitement. Okay, so a guy sneaks it out of the Louvre under his smock. He's Italian. He keeps it for a couple of years, then takes it to Florence and offers it to a gallery owner, thinking he'll be the hero of Italy for repatriating the Mona Lisa. And he actually gets arrested.
Yeah, that happens.
And the Mona Lisa goes back to the Louvre, and ever since then, we can't get enough. And it's hit a crisis point.
That's crazy. I mean, there's got to be something more to it than that. That's not.
It's celebrity.
Yeah.
It's all about
Look,
celebrity.
I've seen it. You've seen it, of course. It's not the biggest painting in the world. It's kind of a small painting.
Well, yeah, it's just a portrait.
Yeah.
So there's not a heck of a lot going on. I mean, don't get me started on that. But the thing is, people want to see it.
Well,
tourists want to see it.
Yeah.
So there's a big Leonardo show being mounted at the Louvre. And so they've had to move the Mona Lisa from its usual galleries to another spot. It's causing huge traffic jams, and people are being limited in terms of, you have to have now a special ticket to get in to see the Mona Lisa.
Naturally.
And people are going crazy. There was a great picture in the New York Times. People don't even look at the painting.
They photograph it.
They hold up their cameras, take a picture, and move on.
Right.
And people say, oh, you can see it much better, on your phone than you can see it in public. So that's really crazy. It's just another notch on the belt. But meanwhile, this reminds me that at the beginning of the past couple of years, I have been playing a video a music video for my class that takes place in the Louvre. It's Apeshit is the name of the video. I know you're shocked. And it's by Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Right.
And it's really pretty fantastic. I think I've talked about this before, but it is fantastic. Apparently, the Louvre feels it's responsible for helping to increase attendance at the Louvre. Perhaps.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. They say they hit a new record in 2018, 10 million visitors.
And they think it's because of the Beyonce video?
They say from the year before, there's a 25% increase in attendance. And they say that's large. They think it's largely due to Beyonce and Jay-Z. Also, let me tell you this. You can now go to the Louvre and take the Beyonce Jay-Z tour. So that you go, they take you around to the different works of art that are featured in that
that's going to
video.
answer. So I haven't seen the video. I'm the only person in America who hasn't seen the video. But
no, but when I show it to my students, many of them have not seen it either.
But does it show the paintings? Is that what's in the video?
It does, and the
and that's
Jay-Z
the point of
and
it?
Beyonce, the dancers, kind of interact with the different works of art. They're juxtaposed. It's really quite amazing and quite interesting, and it raises subjects about beauty, about art, about what is beautiful, who is beautiful, gender issues, racial issues. There's even a moment when Jay-Z is saying, I said no to the Super Bowl, which is quite funny now because he has said yes to the Super Bowl.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah, Jay-Z is going to be working with the NFL producing the Super Bowl.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. It's a big deal.
Oh, okay.
And, of course, that raises political issues as well.
Yeah.
So, anyway, another little museum update. One of the Lewis chessmen has been sold. Now, you know the Lewis chessmen because I dragged you to a lecture at the Met.
Yes, the worst lecture ever.
Worst lecture ever. I've never forgiven myself for going to that art history lecture and making you go. Right. Interesting subject, not interesting talk at all. Anyway, it's from several sets of chess players that are made of walrus ivory. Dating back to the 12th century. They were discovered in the early 19th century. And this particular piece, which is a warder, which is comparable to like a rook, a castle. Okay.
A rook, very good.
The people in Scotland who owned it had no idea that it was valuable. So someone in their family bought it in the 60s for £5.
Yeah.
Okay. Not even $10. It just sold this July for almost $1 million.
Well, this is like an Antiques Roadshow thing,
Yeah, once in a while it works out.
Yeah, well, but you reminded me when you talk about the walrus ivory, the one nickname I should have asked you about. I'll get your opinion. Pete Alonso.
Right.
Nickname.
Polar bear.
What do you think?
I don't care. Why? But why is he the polar bear?
There's no reason. But do you think it's a good nickname?
All right. Do polar bears hit a lot of home runs?
I don't know, but
I'm mystified.
He just set the record.
He doesn't look like a polar bear.
He tied the Met record for most homers in a season yesterday, and it's still August.
You just wanted to talk about Pete Alonso.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he's a Met.
All right, go to Percy Park. I know we have a bulletin of Percy Park.
Well, there was a headline in the local Bucks County Herald this week. Front page, below the fold, but front page, firefighters install smoke detectors in Percy Park's Victorian cottages. And I just bring that up because our buddy Armand
Everett,
actually has a cottage in Percy Park.
He's a real estate magnate, and he's now got a property in Percy Park.
With its 63 all-wooden Victorian cottages, narrow access roads, tall trees, single fire hydrant, Percy Park is a firefighter's nightmare.
There you go. You bought into that, Armand. A firefighter's nightmare.
But what fascinates me is there used to be collections. There used to be many more collections of little summer cottages. Some of them were religious organizations, there were various groups that would have cottages. These are not winterized, okay, and they're only open in the summer. And there were many more in the past before there was air conditioning. And people would, want to get out of town, get out of the city or whatever, and go live somewhere cooler for a while. And these are charming, interesting.
No, it sounds great. It sounds
buildings.
It sounds great.
That will go up.
Oh, not anymore.
Like a matchbook.
No, not now. Now they got the
free.
The free fire detectors. Okay, so the only obituary we're going to mention is Felice Giamandi, who is a Italian cyclist, bicycle rider. And what's interesting about him, two things. Number one is that he was, until very recently, the youngest winner of the Tour de France. In 1965, at the age of 22, he won the Tour de France. That was a record in terms of youth that was only broken this year when the fellow Egan Bernal of Colombia is the first Tour de France winner to be younger than this person. And it was even stranger for a 22-year-old to win in 1965 because, strangely, the Tour de France was longer then than it is now. It was tougher then. So much tougher then.
I can't even imagine
I am telling you this.
It's impossible.
But just to make the point, they used to have a lot of youthful riders in the first stages of the race, and as a matter of planning, they would take them out of the race after the first few stages because a person that young wasn't thought to be able to maintain that kind of effort over that many days. So in any event, he was the youngest rider, and he was set to dominate the Tour de France and other similar tours for years, except one odd thing happened, and that was a person named Eddie Merckx. Eddie Merckx came on the scene just immediately after 1965, and he became the dominant rider of the era, so much so that he became nicknamed the Cannibal. He won 5 Tours de France. This is Eddie Merckx. And there were many, many races where Eddie Merckx came in second, and Eddie Merckx. And Felice Giamandi came in second to Eddie Merckx came in first.
Right.
And
so the guy you're talking about, Giamandi,
is a second place guy.
Is basically the Avis.
I was going to give examples. Avis is not bad, but I would say
I'm sure he tried harder.
Yeah, I'm sure he tried. Well, no, actually, the style was he was very elegant, and Eddie Merckx looked like he was killing himself, but Eddie Merckx would win. But there are a lot of guys. To me, the best example, and maybe this is dated, but it's worth it because the U.S. Open's coming up, was Rod Laver was a great tennis player of the 1960s, and a little before that, Ken Rosewall came in second in every tournament. But people remember Rod Laver. In horse racing, was the best example is Affirmed and Alidor. Affirmed won the Triple Crown. Alidor came in second in every race. There are situations like that where, but for the presence of another person, in this case Eddie Merckx, Giamandi would be considered the greatest cyclist of all time. Instead, Merckx is. So anyway, he passed away. But there was a very interesting article in the Times on cycling, and it wasn't about professional cyclists.
Well, it was basically an op-ed piece, right?
Yeah.
By Jennifer Finney Boylan from Maine. And the title of it is An E-Bike Changed My Life. And she says, since I got the e-bike, I've been riding 15 and 20 miles a day, 4 or 5 days a week. It's been a life-altering, not just making me fitter, but also raising my spirits, getting me out of the house and back into the mountains. And she's in her 60s, and she's just saying, she always enjoyed writing, but it kind of had slipped away from her recently, and the e-bike just reignited that. And it's really changed her life. And she said there was also a discussion about, what are e-bikes doing, and a couple other people commenting, when people first jump on an e-bike, their face lights up. It's exciting and joyful in a way you don't get from a regular
something,
bike.
we've discussed this, I get this magazine, Cycling Plus, which is a UK cycling magazine, and it's a great magazine. You have to get it from the UK, but it's a great magazine. But they talk about real bikes all the time. They're not for beginners or anything like that. But the industry is really taking notice of e-bikes, and the most sophisticated bike manufacturers, like Bianca, in this case, she's talking about Specialized, are making e-bikes now, and they are real bicycles, and they look like fancy bicycles. And you can barely tell that they have an e-bike capability.
Is it embarrassing? Like you're cheating?
It doesn't look.
Really riding,
it looks like a regular bicycle,
and everybody is having a blast. But here's my question.
Yeah.
It seems like they're going to be hard to maintain.
No.
It seems like they're going to break down. They're going to have issues. You're going to say, "Oh, screw it."
I don't think so.
At least with a bicycle, you just pump up the tires and go.
Let me tell you the only challenge. The only challenge is battery life. So you don't want a battery that's too heavy, and you don't want a battery that's too obvious. Right now, you can count on 60, 70 miles on the battery life, okay? Which is good, and maybe more than you would ever need. But you got to charge it overnight for that. For the real cyclists, they would like a little more than that. So that's what they're working on.
Well, only time will tell.
It's only going to get better. It's only going to get better.
All right. So
all right?
We'll see.
Okay, so that's all we have this week for Tamsen Read the Paper. Perhaps, there's no perhaps
come
about
back next week. There'll be more about e-bikes and wine in a can and
but also more about Zeke and Noel.
Oh yes, congratulations, Zeke and Noel.
And we'll be celebrating that next week and
this
reporting on it.
This is Tamsen Granger
and Dan Abuhoff
on the way to L.A.